Tonic ran hurriedly through the darkness, his breath coming in ragged gasps as he navigated the labyrinthine streets of the red zone. His heart pounded in his chest, a frantic rhythm that matched the urgency of his steps. The eerie silence was broken only by the echo of his footsteps against the decaying walls, each sound a reminder of the dangers lurking in the shadows.
Oh man, I can't believe I overslept. Riz is gonna kill me.
Trip muttered to himself, his voice tinged with anxiety. Finally, he arrived at his destination. His friend and mentor, Rizzle Rex, waited in the gloom, his imposing figure partially obscured by the scant light filtering through the grime-covered windows. Rizzle's eyes, sharp and unforgiving, fixed on Trip as he approached.
So you finally decided to show, did you?
Sorry, Riz. I guess I overslept.
Trip replied sheepishly, unable to meet Rizzle's piercing gaze.
Rule number 7 in the Hunter's Handbook, lad. Always get a good night's sleep before a hunt.
Rizzle chided, his tone a mix of exasperation and concern.
That's not a real thing.
Rule number 1 in the Hunter's Handbook, never question your superior.
Rizzle countered, his eyes narrowing.
That's convenient.
Trip grumbled under his breath.
Aye, well, you're here now. Let's get this show on the road. Did you bring the traps?
Rizzle asked, his eyes scanning the surroundings with practiced vigilance.
The traps?
Trip echoed, his eyes widening in realization.
Aye, the traps, lad. You know, to catch the big bloody monster we're here to kill.
Rizzle said with a sigh.
Oh, those traps.
Trip stammered, feeling the weight of his forgetfulness.
You're an absolute star, lad. You know that?
I was running late and
Forget it.
Rizzle said gruffly.
I'm sorry, Riz. Do you want me to go back and get them?
Trip offered, his voice tinged with desperation.
You've wasted enough time already. Forget the traps. We'll just have to do this the old-fashioned way.
Rizzle decided, his tone brooking no argument.
Don't worry, Riz. We got this.
Trip exclaimed confidently, trying to shake off his earlier mistake.
Don't get cocky, lad. You're not invincible.
Rizzle warned, his eyes boring into Trip's.
You can't prove otherwise.
Trip retorted with a cheeky grin.
I'm serious, Trip. This job's dangerous. If you're not careful, you'll end up dead or worse.
Rizzle said sternly, his expression grave.
Then let's go home, Riz. Leave the monsters to do monster stuff.
Trip suggested, attempting to lighten the mood.
And what happens if those monsters make it to town? What then?
Rizzle questioned, his voice low and serious. Trip fell silent, the weight of Rizzle's words sinking in.
I'm the Thane of this district, Trip. It's my duty to protect the people living back in town. That's an oath I took a long time ago. An oath that I don't intend to break. You've made no oath, so if you want to go home, no one's stopping you.
Rizzle explained, his voice steady and unwavering.
Geez, Riz, relax. I was only pulling your leg.
Trip responded, trying to diffuse the tension. Rizzle grunted, his expression softening slightly.
Look, I'm sorry about the traps. I'll do better, I promise.
Trip pledged, his voice sincere. Rizzle remained silent, his eyes studying Trip closely.
Come on, Riz. Let me prove it to you. Let me take lead on this hunt.
Trip insisted, his determination shining through.
You want to lead? Ha! You couldn't lead your finger up your own arse, lad.
Rizzle scoffed, a hint of amusement in his voice.
Hey, could too.
Trip retorted, a spark of defiance in his eyes.
You really think you're ready to lead your own hunt?
Rizzle asked seriously, his gaze intense.
I really do.
Trip declared, his resolve firm.
All right, lad. Everyone deserves a second chance. Prove to me you're not a complete fleck in Egypt.
Rizzle conceded, a small smile tugging at his lips.
You won't regret it, Riz. So, what's our target?
Trip inquired eagerly, ready to prove himself.
We've received reports of a dangerous Class A automaton in this area. It's already responsible for destroying our northern blockade and injuring 6 of our men. It was last seen disappearing into this red zone.
Rizzle briefed, his tone grave.
Gotcha.
Tripp acknowledged, his eyes alight with determination.
If you really want to prove you can lead your own hunt, then track down this monster and destroy it. I'll be here to back you up, but as leader, you're responsible for all decisions we make.
So this is what true power feels like?
Tripp mused, a hint of awe in his voice.
I hope you're taking this seriously, Tripp. One false move in the red zone, and it's game over for us. I'm trusting you enough to put my life in your hands. Don't let me down, or I'll flecking kill you.
Tripp and Rizzle set off into the red zone, their steps measured and cautious. The dilapidated structures and winding alleyways seemed to close in around them, the oppressive atmosphere thickening with each passing moment. The eerie silence was broken only by the occasional creak of decaying wood or the distant sound of scurrying creatures.
Huh. It won't open.
Tripp observed, trying the door and finding it unyielding. Rizzle attempted the keypad, but it remained unresponsive.
Try it again.
Tripp urged, his brow furrowed in concentration. Rizzle tried the keypad again. The door didn't budge.
And again.
I don't think it's working, Tripp.
Rizzle stated, his tone calm but firm.
What's wrong with it?
Tripp asked, scratching his head.
I think the battery is depleted.
Rizzle deduced, inspecting the keypad closely.
Can we fix it?
Tripp inquired, hope tinging his voice.
We would have a better chance of finding a new power source. There must be a battery around here, with enough juice left to power the door.
Rizzle replied, his eyes scanning the area.
Okay, so we just look for a battery.
Tripp concluded, his confidence returning.
No, you look for a battery.
Rizzle corrected, a stern look in his eyes.
You're the leader this time around, are you not? You look for the battery, and I'll just sit here and eat my sandwiches.
You brought sandwiches?
Tripp asked, incredulous.
Rule number 26 in the Hunter's Handbook. Always bring sandwiches.
Rizzle quipped, settling down to eat. Tripp split from Rizzle and explored the immediate area, searching for a new battery. The oppressive silence seemed to close in around him, every shadow a potential threat. After what felt like an eternity, he finally found a battery and returned to the door.
Open sesame.
Tripp announced triumphantly, inserting the battery and watching as the door creaked open.
Tripp, look out.
Enemies appeared from behind the door, their forms grotesque and menacing.
Ugh!
Tripp exclaimed, drawing his weapon. After a fierce battle, Tripp and Rizzle emerged victorious, panting and covered in sweat.
Riz, are you okay?
Tripp asked, his voice tinged with concern.
Don't worry about me, lad. Just a scratch. Are you all right?
Rizzle inquired, his eyes scanning Tripp for injuries.
I think I need a clean pair of underwear, but I'll be fine.
Tripp exclaimed, shaking slightly from the adrenaline rush.
Those things came out of nowhere.
We're heading deeper into the red zone. It's only going to get more dangerous from here on out.
Rizzle warned, his expression serious.
Really?
Tripp stammered, the gravity of the situation beginning to weigh on him.
After you, Mr. Leader.
Rizzle prompted, his tone carrying a hint of irony.